Hello viewer, so today we are going to be creating a simple guess game using JavaScript. A simple guess game like this that you can roll. When you roll, a random number is generated. We can see the random number is 7. Then half of that random number is also taken. We can see it 3.5. So after rolling the first time, I'm going to have 3 trials to guess the number. So the game will prompt me to enter a guess number. Now, if I enter a guess number that is less than half of the random number, let's say I enter 2, it's going to tell me you are far below the rule. Now, if I enter a number that is above the half of the random number generated, let's say I enter a guess number 4, it's going to tell me keep trying, you are closer. Then if I'm able to get the guess number correctly, let's say I enter 7, it's going to tell me hooray, you won, that was 7. Then my score increased by 1. And also I can roll again. If I'm able to get the number, it tells me hooray, you won, that was 4, and my score increased by 2. I roll again, and if I enter any number that is not an integer, it tells me invalid input. I should roll again, and it automatically resets my score. So that's what we are going to be doing today. So let's dive into our practical. So I have set up my HTML and my CSS. Let me open a live preview. Now I have set up my HTML and my CSS, but the game is not yet functional because we've not added JavaScript. And that is what we are going to be doing right away. We can see my score. Where the score will be displayed, it has a class of score. Where the int will be displayed, it has an ID of int. The roll button, the user clicks, it has an ID of roll. The reset button has an ID of reset. And the result, where the result is being displayed to the player, it has an ID of result. So I'll be calling each and every one of these in my JavaScript. So let's start. So let me give it, let's call the first one, let's guess number. So it's a class, so we're using query selector. And we'll give it a class of guess. So let's call our roll button also. Let's roll. We give it an ID. So we're getting elements by ID. Rule. So we have our guess, our rule, and our reset. So let's reset button. Document.get element by ID. Reset. So let's get our result also. Give it an ID. Document dot get element by ID result. Now let's get our int. Document dot get element by ID int. Also, we are displaying our score. We gave it a class of score, so it will be query selector. Document dot query selector dot score. Now let's go back to our game. Now let me refresh it. Now when we roll the first time, random number are being generated. Now when we enter a guess number, it says oops, try again, you have 2 trials left. That means we have 3 trials to guess the number. So when I click submit again, it says enter a guess game, 1 trials left. Then it said, oops, game over. So I have to reset it. So we have to create a variable that will be monitoring the number of times we've clicked the submit or the roll button. So let's click count. So let's set it to 0. Also, we need something that will be where we'll be storing our score. Need to be 0. Also, we'll be generating random number. So let's just create a variable for it. It's not storing anything yet. We'll also be getting half of that random number. So now, the first thing we can see here is that in the game, it says, please roll the dice. So we're going to be displaying that in our results. This results here. So we're going to say result dot inner html should go to please what roll the dice. Now we discover that when we are going to guess a number is we can't input anything. I'm clicking on it now, but we can't input anything until we click on rule before we can input anything. So to do that, the guess number we are going to disable it. So we are going to be saying guess number dot disabled should be equals to true, and you can see that it has been disabled. Our score, we are using the mark, this mark variable that we created here. We want you to be storing our score, so we want to be displaying this mark in our score. Score dot inner html should be equal to mark, so we can see it 0. So now to begin, let's create a function for our role. What will happen when a user click on role? Let us go. Going to have function rule. So now we discover that we can only click the rule 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 times. We click rule, and we can guess 1, 2, 3 before our game is over. So now we are going to be using the click count to monitor the number of times it has been clicked. So when a user click on rule, we increase the count by 1. So let's say click count. So we increase the click count by 1 like this. So now at the first click, we want we want this input. We want this input to be released so our user can guess a number at the first click. So now I'm going to say if click count is equals to 1, that is at the first click, guess number or disabled should be equals to false. On this role button, we need to add an event listener that will perform the function of this role. So this is the role button that we've called here. So we're going to say role button dot add event listener. When we click on it, it should perform. We're going to call the role function. So we added an event listener to this role button. So when we click on it, it's going to perform the role function. So you can see it releases it. So what is the next thing? We said our guess number dot disabled should be equals to false. Now the next thing, we need to generate our random number. So let's create a variable called generate should be equals to, now I want to generate our random number using math dot random 10. So this is going to generate a random number from 0 to 9, but we want to generate a random number from 0 to 10. So I'm going to be adding 1 to it. Now We want it to be an integer. We don't want it to generate a decimal value. So we're going to use mass.floor to be rounding it up. Math.floor. Rounding this up. So after that, what is the next thing? With this generate now holds this random number. So let's pass this generate to our global variable random. So we're going to say random should be equals to generate. So we are passing this generate to this global variable here, random. Also, let's console.log console.log our random. That is at the first click. Now we need to generate half of this random number. So let's create a variable. Let half generate should be equals to, so it's going to be when we generate a random number, we are taking the half, it can be in decimal. So we're going to say pass float random divided by 2. So now this half generates, let's pass it to our global variable. So we're going to say half should be equals to half generate. So we can console.log half. Remember, these are the first click. When the click count is equals to 1, that's when the user click it at first. So let's check this in our browser. So yes, our browser. Let me add a tag here. Let me add something here so we know the one we are working it. We are building a game. So it will be easy to differentiate from this one that I've built before as a preamble. So now when we click on role, we can see it generates a random number 7 and half of the 7 also 3.5. We've console.log it so that we can see it. So now let's check this. When we click the role at first, you discover that it changes to submit. So how are we going to do it? That when we click on role, this role button, it changes to submit. So let's go back to our code. Now we've called our role button here, so we're just going to change the text content. So we're going to say role button dot text content should be equals to submit. So when we click it at first, it changes to submit. That's at the first click. Now with this one that I've built before, when we click on role, it now prompts us to enter a guess number between 1 to 15. So also we're going to call our result dot inner html should be equals to enter a guess number between 1 to 15. So that is at the first click. When we click on it, we are still working out if click count is equals to 1. We are increasing the click count here anytime we click on the rule. So now it says enter a guess number between 1 to 15. That's at the first click. Now what now happens if we now click it the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time? What now happens? So now we're going to have our else if statement. Else if click count is greater than 1 and click count is less than 4. We just want the user to be able to click once, then have 3 tries to guess the game. So now, when the user click on rule, this place is disabled. When the user click on rule, it is enabled so that user can guess a number. So when the user now, the next thing the user is going to do is to enter that number, then click submit the next time. So we need to, at the second click, we need to retrieve any number that is here. So let's create a variable called input be equals to. Now we retrieve it using, we're going to use our guess number. Since our guess number is the input we are using, this input, we give it a class of guess number and we've called it here. So we're going to let input be equals to guess number. So we want to retrieve the value in the input dot value, guess number dot value. Now input is going to be equals to any input there. So first of all, we want to ensure that the user inputs an integer number, not a decimal or a floating number. So we are going to check that error handling first inside this our else if statement. So we are going to say if guess number dot value, if guess number dot value, if guess number dot value is not equals to, so we're going to use this is equal to, we're going to use this sign to negate it. It's not equals to math dot floor math.floor of guess number dot value of guess number dot value. If guess number dot value is not equals to the rounded number of it, that is, if it's not equals to an integer, what should happen? Let's check what happens in our game. If I input an integer, let's say input 1.6, it says invalid input, roll again, and it resets the game. So now we are supposed to create a reset function, but we've not gotten there. Let us add the message. So I'm going to say result dot inner html should be equals to invalid input roll again. So result dot inner html should be equals to invalid input roll again. So now let's check it out. Let me click on roll. Let me enter. So it says invalid input roll again. Now let's continue. Else if still under this, now remember we are still working under this else if statement. If the click count is greater than 1 but less than 4. So else if input is equals to random. Now that means if the input, no, set our inputs to be equals to guess number dot value. So if the input now is not equals to random, that means if it's equals to the random number being generated, that means the user was able to guess correctly. So what are we going to say? We're going to say results dot inner html should be equals to hooray you won, hooray you won, dice was lost. So we want to tell the user the random number that was generated. So we're going to say hooray you won, the dice was random. So now let's check it. Let's roll. Also, we need to increase our mark. We're using mark to store our score. So mark will be equals to +1 each time the user gets it correctly. Each time the user gets it correctly, I will be able to say score dot inner html should equals to mark. So now after that, let's check this one I've built as a preamble. When we enter role 6, let's say I click on 6 and I click submit, it says hooray you won, dice was 6. We can see that the color is green. So we're going to say result . result dot style dot color should be equals to green. So let's check it out in the browser. Since I will not know the number random number generated. So when we click on rule, the random number generated is 9. So let me enter 9 now. So it says hooray, you won. Dice was 9. So there should be a gap between this 9 and random. So now let us continue. Now that is if the user wins the game. Now when the user wins the game also, we need to reset it, but if not create our reset, we're going to create it as time goes on. We're going to be adding it to the necessary place. Now what of if the user now impute a if the user do not impute anything, leaves it empty? As we can see, the game I've created as a preamble. When the user click on submit, it tells the user enter a guess number, and the number of trials also reduces. That means it is against the user. So now we are going to check if it is empty now. So we're going to say else if it guess number dot value is equal to an empty string, what should happen? So result dot inner html. So I'm going to say result dot inner html should be equals to, now it should be equals to what? Enter a guess number. Enter a guess number. They want to tell the user the number of trials left. We want the user to be able to click 4 times. So we're going to be able to know the number of trials left. It will be that 4 minus the number of click. That means the number of times the user have clicked it. So it will be plus 4 minus click count. And we want it to be in a red. So result dot style dot color should be equals to red. So let's check it out. This is one I've built. I've added something to it. We are building. So we can always know that that is one we are working on. So now I click on rule. I didn't enter anything. Okay. Now if guess number dot value is equals to an empty string, this needs to be double since we are trying to check. We're not equating it. So let's refresh it again and rule. So it say enter a guess number 2. So we want to say 2 trials left. So I'm going to say 2 plus trials left. So let's roll again and check it. So it says enter a guess number, 2 trials left. When I click, it's enter a guess number, 1 trials left. Now when I click third time, it's meant to say game over. Now that's we are checking if we are trying to check if it is an empty value that is being imputed. So after that, what do we need to do again? We've changed the color to red. Now we want to be giving the user hint on what is going on. That was why we generated a random number. That's why we generated half. We look for half of the random number being generated. So now if a user input a number that is equals to half of the random number, we're going to tell the user you are almost there. If a user now input a number that is less than half of the random number, we are going to tell the user you are far below the random number. If the user also input a number that is greater than half of the random number, we are going to tell the user keep trying, you are almost there. So now how do we go about it? Still inside this if is of if count is greater than 1 and click count is less than 4. We are going to say else if our inputs, which is equals to guess number dot value, is equals to half. Is equals to half. What are we meant to tell the user? Int. Now we're going to call our int that we've called here int. Int dot inner html should be equals to you are almost there. You are almost there. Now, so we are trying to tell the user that they are almost there. So that is the int we are giving the user. If the guess number the user input is equal to half of the random number being generated, I know that random number the user cannot see it. We only console.log since we are building. So now when the user inputs a number that is equal to half of that random number, we know that the user did not get the guess value. So we're still going to tell the user results.innerHTML is equal to oops, try again, then the number of trials left. Oops, try again. Let me reduce this. Oops, try again. Then instead use the number of trials left. Then it's also the color should be in red. Result dot style dot color should be equals to red. So we are giving hints to the user, and as we are giving hints to the user, we are also telling the user the number of trials they have left. So let me roll and let me input a. If I input now, it generates a random number 9, but the input is in decimal, but I can't input a decimal number here. So let me roll again. Let's roll. So 2. So now let me input 1 as my. So it generates a random number 2. Let me input 1 as my guess number. So say you are almost there. Oops, try again. 2 trials left. So now let's continue. Now if the user now inputs a guess number that is above half of the random number being generated, so we are going to say, notice my color here is blue. That's because I've set it in my style in my CSS that the color should be blue. So let's continue. Still under the parent else if input is greater than random. Now let's check if the input is greater than the random number being generated. We are generating a random number. Let me silence this. We are generating a random number between 1 to 10, but we are telling the user to enter a guess number between 1 to 15. That means there's a probability for the user to enter a number that is above the random number being generated. So else if the user's input is greater than the random number, so we're going to say result int.innerHTML. Let's give user the int.innerHTML should be equals to you are far above the rule. You are far above the rule. Then result.innerHTML should be equals to oops, try again. Should be equals to oops, try again. You are almost there. So that is if the user enter an input a guess number that is above the random number that is being generated. So result dot style dot color should be equals to red. Let us check it out now. Let us roll. The random number generated is 8. So let's input a number above 8. Let's say 9. So it tells us you are far above the rule. Oops, try again. 2 trials left. Now, what of if the number imputed is less than the half of the random number generated? So we are taking the half, which is 4, and that's what we're using to tell the user if is if it's closer to the guess number. So now we're going to say else if input less than half. If the input is less than half, so what should be our int? We are going to tell the user you are far below the rule. So int dot inner html equals to you are far below the rule. Now our result dot inner html should equals to oops, try again, the number of trials left. That is if the user inputs a number that is less than half, and the color result dot style dot color should be equals to red. So let's continue. That is if the user inputs is less than half of the number. Now we are going to discover that this is what I built as preamble. When we rule and I enter and let's say I enter 1, it clears the inputs that was there before. But for the one we are building now, when I rule, let's say I enter 2, it's not clearing the input. So we need it to clear the input that is there. So at each of these, we are going to say input or whichever whatsoever you wish, guess number dot value should be equals to an empty string so that the user can input again. So it should be equals to an empty string. So let's check it out. So when we rule, let's enter 2 now. It clears it. You are far below the rule. That's because I enter a number that is less than half of this random number being generated. So what of if these are now inputs a number that is greater than half of the random number being generated? So I'm going to else if input is greater than if input is greater than half. So our int dot inner html should be equals to, now what should be our int? Keep trying, you are almost there. Keep trying, you are almost there. So after giving an int, what will be the result? The result will still be this because the user have not gotten the actual guess. So result dot inner html should still be equals to oops, try again, then the number of trials left, and our result dot style dot color equals to red. So that is if the user input, that is the number the user guess is greater than half. So let us continue. We need to reset the guess number. So we need to make it empty so that the user can input again. Now, so these are the errors we are handling here. So let me rule. I enter a number 3. It says hooray, you won. Dice was 3. Then my score is equals to 1. Now the reason why my score is equals to 1 is because where I said if input is equals to random, you see I increase the mark by 1. So the mark will increase by 1 and it will save it in our mark. So now see when I input here, let's say I get it, it says hooray, you won, dice was 8, and I can roll again. I can roll again after winning. So but you see here when I click on roll and I enter the correct guess number, it's not giving the chance to roll again. So that all those functions will be in our reset. So now what should now be the next thing? We'll be able to check if input is greater than half. So let's create a function for our reset. So function reset. This is meant to be outside here. So we are creating it outside this rule. Not all these things are happening within the rule when the user is clicking the rule button. So function reset. Now, when we are resetting, our rule button dot text content should go back to rule. We want it to go back to rule. Now, results dot inner HTML. That's we are resetting everything. Should be equals to please roll the dice. Now, the color should be black. Result dot style dot color should be equals to black. Now we need to remove every input that the user has inputted when the user click reset. Guest number dot value should be equals to an empty string. That's when we are resetting. Then we need to disable it. No, we are resetting back to the original way it was. So guest number dot dot disabled should be equals to true. Now, if we set the guest number dot disabled equals to true, we need to reset our click count also because we are resetting. Click count should be equals to 0. Now, we are trying to reset everything to the way it was. Int dot inner HTML. Let's say there was a int. We are clearing it. It should equals to empty. Now we are resetting. Mark should be equals to 0. Then our score dot inner HTML should be equals to mark. So that is when the user click reset. So let's add an event listener to the reset button. That is this reset button we've called here. So we're going to say reset button dot add event listener. When user click on it, what should happen? We're going to call the reset. So let's say I rule and I enter 4, click submit. It says you are far below the row. So that means I'm not any way closer to it. But when I now click reset, let me refresh it. Rule 4, you are far below. When I now click reset, okay, I'm not calling it well. It should be reset, then my bracket. That means I'm calling the function. So let me roll again. 5. So when I reset, it clears everything. So that's the meaning of reset. So now let's go back to our code. Now what of we want the user to just be able to click 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then at this fourth clicking, it should tell the user game over. So now this else if count is greater than 1, our click count is less than 4. Now out of if click count is equals to 4 or is equals to 4, so we're going to create our else if outside this else if. Remember all this if all the if statements we'll be creating since has been inside this else if. So we are creating outside it now under else if. Now when the user is at the fourth click, if the guess number is not equals to the random number, no, it's possible that the user click the first time. It is possible that the user clicked the first time, the user did not get it. The second time, the third time. Then now the user now input here and click the fourth time. It's possible that the guess number is correct, and it's possible that the guess number is not correct. So I'm going to check for two things. So now, else if guess number dot value is not equals to, so I'm going to add this our sign, it's not equals to random, and our click count is already equals to 4, and click count is equals to 4, what should happen? Our result dot inner HTML should be equals to oops game over. Now our role button, the role button dot disabled, will disable the role button so that the user will not be able to click the role button again. So equals to true. And also, when the game is over, we need to disable this guest input so that the user will not be input again, will not be able to input again. So guest number dot disabled should be equals to true. Should be equals to true. So what can we do again? Now, when the game is over, we set our click count to be equals to 0. Click count should be equals to 0. Now let's check it. So I roll the first time, 1. This is second. Let me reset it. You should see. Reset. I roll the first time, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, game over. So let's check how it works here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It says oops, game over. But we discover that okay, this button is disabled and we cannot input anything. So we are left with the option to do what? To reset. Now when we reset, our role button should not be disabled. When we click on reset, let's check. So let's add it here. When we click on reset, role button. No, when we click on reset here, our role button is disabled, but we want it to be enabled. Role button dot disabled should be equals to false. So let's refresh. We first roll in random number generated 2, 3, 4. So I left to reset and reset is to roll. Now that is if the guest number is not equals to value and the user is already at the fourth click. Now what of if the guest number is not equals to the random number at the fourth click? So we're going to add our else if also. Else if, now else if guest number dot value is equals to random and click count is equals to 4. Now what should happen at this moment? We're going to increase our score by 1. We're going to increase our score by 1. Now our score dot inner HTML should be equals to mark. Now result dot inner HTML should be equals to uri you won. Then it's going to tell us the dice. Dice was plus random. So result dot color, result dot style dot color should be equals to green. Now we need to reset it also. So yeah, we are going to click on reset. We're calling our reset function. So now let's check it out. We roll the first time, the second time we didn't get it, the third time. Now we're not able to get it at the fourth time. So it says hooray, you won. That is what was 9. So it resets it. It reset it. It perform everything here. Result dot, it performs everything here. Then our mark is added to our score 1. So we can roll again. So the input also should be disabled. So guest number disabled should be equals to true. So let's check it. 1, 2, 3. So I'm able to get it here. 4. So hooray, you won. That was 1. You roll. 1, 2. We're able to get it at this last point. Hooray, you won. That was 8. But discover our mark did not add. That is our score did not add. So let's check. Now, let's create another function called order reset. So we're going to call this order reset. So this reset, when the user gets the number, we want to reset. We're going to be using this order reset, but we're not going to set our mark to be equals to 0 here. Our mark will not be equals to 0. So in this reset here, we are going to call the order reset. Order reset. So this is the one we are building. So let's check it out. 2, 3, enter 7, correct. I roll again. 2. I'm able to get it. 10. Submit. So you see it added. I roll again. 2. It generates 10 again. 10. So it's adding. So now we'll be able to check if the guess number dot value is equals to the random and click count is equals to 4. What of if maybe at the first time I roll I was able to get it? It says hooray, you won, but we need to call our order reset. So if input is equals to random, now in this if input is equals to random, we're going to call our order reset. That is it. So let's check it out. We roll. I'm able to enter a guess number 4. It says hooray, you won. So it has disabled this. So I roll again. I enter 3. Hooray, you won. My score, then I can reset. So you should know that I added this we are building. So we're going to know that we're going to be able to differentiate between the preamble I created and this one that we are working on. So now if I now enter an invalid input, what should happen? We want it to reset it and even reset our score. So in our JS, we're going to add the reset function here. Reset. So now let me roll. I enter a non-integer. It reset. It said invalid input, roll again. So it says invalid input, roll again, but our guess number is not disabled. So let's check our reset function. So guess number, so it should be disabled, not disabled, should be equals to true. So now let's check it again, the one we are building. So let me roll and enter a non-input 1.5. You see invalid input, roll again, and it is disabled. So this is basically how to create a simple guess game using JavaScript. Please, if you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please don't forget to subscribe and also click the notification bell. Thank you very much.